My name is Alexis Rae, and I'm a resident in counseling.
Okay.
I got into this field because I knew from a really young age that I wanted to be in a helping profession. I've always been really fascinated by the brain, honestly, how it works, how people feel, and how people experience things and their emotions. I see a little bit of everybody, honestly, but I would say I'm really passionate about my work with children. Children are the future, and so I think it's really important that we pour into them and that we're giving them the skills to emotionally regulate and, live life to the fullest and into adulthood. So I really think it's important to be really authentic and warm with the kids. I think like getting on their level. We're on the floor, we're playing, we are doing things that make them feel comfortable in the space and just really getting to their level because they see the world in such a different way. I see adults as well, and I think, my approach with adults is in ways similar, showing up, providing this really warm, authentic space. I try to be really open with my clients. I'm human too, so I understand that it can be nerve-wracking to have to come in and be really vulnerable and open. So I just try to create a really authentic, warm space. I chose faith-based because faith is the most important part of my life, and I think healing through Christ is the deepest and most ultimate form of healing. And so I really love the idea of being able to create a space where you're combining spiritual, mental, and physical health all in one space. Therapists are human too. And I know what it's like to be sitting in the other chair. So, I understand that, like I mentioned earlier, it can be really intimidating to come into a space where someone's asking you to be really vulnerable and really open. And I understand that, so I do my best to make it a space where you can feel comfortable. And I always, I meet you where you are because I've needed to have people meet me where I was. It's okay to show up nervous. It's okay to show up scared, to feel intimidated. All of those things, those are normal feelings to have. And, I always say, just try, give it a shot, see what fits. And I think it's a risk that it typically doesn't have a poor outcome. So just, give it a try. I would say that's dependent, because everybody's different, so everybody has different experiences, different, ways they're taking in the work that we're doing in counseling. So I would say, I've had clients for 6 months and I've had clients for a year. So it's kind of dependent on just what you need. Play is a child's first language, and so you can learn so much about what a child is feeling, experiencing, just through observing their play. And, so what we do in play therapy is we have toys and games and sand trays, and a lot of it's observing, and a lot of it is also making a child feel comfortable enough to open up with this stranger that, mom and dad have said, hey, sit in the room with and talk to for a little bit. So play therapy is a lot of observation, a lot of play, but still doing some talking depending on the age. So when we're engaging in sand tray therapy, a lot of it is, what is the child putting into the tray? What are they leaving out of the tray? What are they doing in the tray? So an example, a child who is kind of dumping everything into the tray, it looks really chaotic. It's a mirror of what's going on in their mind. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling like there's no order to the chaos. And so, a big part of that is, how do we process that? How do we find some order? How do we pick apart what's really going on here?